here. Kaylee's the founder of the Jesus Club here at school. There we go. Shout out to Kaylee. A bunch of guys came with us to camp this summer, so it's super fun to be here with you guys. How many of y'all were at the Jesus Club on Tuesday? There we go. This is like half the room. There we go. We're stoked on the Jesus Club. Well, we're doing those every other Tuesday for the year to come. Our goal really is just to go after Jesus, to dream about what he has for this school, what he has for you guys in your future. So it's super fun to be a part of. We're going to have pizza. We're going to be sharing a message. It's going to be super fun. So a little bit of a background about me, okay? Now, I may look like, a Californian through and through, okay? I've lived in California for 12 years. I've been part of a ministry called Circuit Riders in the past, and I've been at Crossline Church for the past 6 months, okay? But before that, I actually came from the East Coast, from Virginia, okay? Now, Virginia is a southern state, okay? So I may look like a Californian before you today, but I'm actually a country bumpkin. Okay, everybody say country bumpkin. Okay, there we go. A country bumpkin, okay, it's a person from the South. And they're a little bit hillbilly. Okay, they're a little bit different. And you can always tell that someone's a country bumpkin by the names of their cousins. Okay, it's actually not even about them. It's about their extended family, okay? And you can tell I'm a country bumpkin because I have some cousins and some uncles and aunts with some interesting names, okay? I have an Uncle Bubba, a real Uncle Bubba. I have an Uncle Biggie, okay? I have an Uncle Perky. I have uncles named Happy and Pico, okay? I have an Aunt Put, P-U-T, short for Putnam. I have a cousin named Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N. Okay, I have a nephew named Wiley Danger. Okay, his middle name is actually Danger. I don't know whose idea that was, but it was a bad one for sure. Guys, we haven't even gotten to the weird ones yet, okay? Now, Bubba, okay, he has the weirdest, his family is the weirdest of them all. Okay, Bubba has the audacity to have 2 sisters, okay? Now, his first sister is named Little. L-I-T-T-L-E, Little. Okay, now Little's son is named Gimlet. G-I-M-L-E-T. Now you thought that was the punchline. That wasn't even the weirdest one. Okay, Bubba's other sister. Now I have no idea what happened in that hospital room. Okay, it was like a beautiful baby girl is born. They're like, babe, what do you think we should name her? And she just somehow, the mom just turns to her husband. I think we should name her Sugar Pig. They literally named her Sugar Pig. I don't know what is happening. It feels like an alternate universe. Okay. Long story short, I had to get out of there. Just kidding. No, my family's actually all really amazing. Okay, but I come from a bit of a different background. Okay, I look like a Californian before you, but deep down, I'm still a country bumpkin at heart. Everybody say country bumpkin. There we go. Now, I moved to California 12 years ago, okay, because my life was radically changed by the love of Jesus. Okay, I was 14, 15 years old when I really kind of made my faith my own. I grew up in the church, but I started to really understand who Jesus was for myself around that age. And later on, I decided to move to California to be a missionary, to join a missions organization, because I believe that this generation is desperate for something real and for something truly authentic. And I would say that they're desperate for the love of Jesus. Come on, preach it. There we go. So I moved to California because I was convinced that God had a plan for this generation, and I wanted to be a part of seeing that come to pass. Now, what I would say is this, that this generation actually has what I would call a love deficit. Okay, that means there is a real lack of love in our generation. And you can kind of tell because it's almost like to actually be affectionate, to show love to someone is almost kind of strange. I feel like the way that we show love to each other is we just roast each other. Right? How many of y'all, you can sometimes partake in the roasting culture, okay? It's somehow, you're supposed to, tell your bro that you love him and you just call him ugly. And it's man, I don't know. This is a weird culture we live in, right? So for some reason, it's almost strange to kind of express love to one another. And so for that reason, I would say that our generation, and it's kind of all good fun in here, but the world around us, you can see that there's a real lack of love and a lack of what is truly the love of Jesus. And the only thing that can fill that void in our generation is the love of Jesus. Now, Jesus answers a question, right? He was once asked, well, what is the greatest command? Right? What is, of all the commands, what is the greatest one? And Jesus responds by saying these two things. Number one, love God. Everybody say, love God. Right? That's the greatest command, to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And my kind of message for you today is that if you haven't done that yet, then that's your takeaway for today. My challenge for you would be this, man, fall in love with Jesus. And I grew up in the church, man. I, believed in God my whole life, but there was a moment later in life where my faith kind of turned from being my parents' faith to then where I started to actually fall in love with God. I started to fall in love with Jesus and who he was. So if you haven't done that yet, then that is your takeaway for today. Right? But if you're in here and you're like, man, you know what? I'm stoked on Jesus. I love him with my whole heart. Then you can move on to the second command, which is this, to love your neighbor. Everybody say, love your neighbor. Now, if we're kind of talking about love, right? If we want to be a generation that carries the love of Jesus, then we have to answer the question, what does it mean to love? And there's a story in Luke 10 that Jesus uses to kind of answer this question. And I'm going to read kind of, guys, a long passage for you. Okay. So I need you to buckle in. I need you to take your symbolic seatbelt, click it in. Everybody literally take your seatbelt, click yourself in. Okay. We're locking in. Here we go. The story says this: one day, an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question: Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus replied, what does the law of Moses say, and how do you read it? The man answered, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Right, Jesus told him, do this and you'll live. But the man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho and was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along. But when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by. Then a despised Samaritan came along. And when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. And he put him on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you next time I'm here. Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. The man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said, go and do the same. Now, to give you guys some context, right, is that this road from Jerusalem down to Jericho was a dangerous road. Okay, and I've actually been on that road before, and it literally is crazy. It's like it starts up in these cliffs, and then it winds down these cliffs, crazy switchbacks, super steep, until you get to this valley called the Jericho Valley. And this road was so dangerous that it was actually called the Bloody Pass. It's intense, right? This road is so dangerous that it's known for robbers. It's known for people getting beat up. I want you to imagine yourself like you're traveling to your grandma's house. Okay, but the only way to go is by taking the Bloody Pass. It's like, man, okay, traveling to grandma's house means something different today, right? And I don't know, man, you'd probably be a little bit nervous going down this road. You might have a little pep in your step. You got to walk the whole thing. You'd probably be traveling a little quicker than normal, right? And man, now I want you to imagine you come up, right? And there's a guy laying in the ditch, right? And you're like, man, what's going on? Like you're thinking it's probably a trap, right? There's bandits, there's robbers, there's at least some wild goats that are waiting to beat you up. It's fake. The guy's faking, right? This is dangerous. This is crazy. I don't trust the situation, right? And sometimes when we don't really put ourselves in the situation, we can kind of like usually think, well, like, oh yeah, like I'd be the Good Samaritan in this story, right? I'd probably be the guy like, no, I'm not just going to pass the guy by, and we can usually kind of put ourselves in the shoes of the Good Samaritan, and we try to distance ourselves from the priest and from the Levite. We can kind of start asking ourselves, man, what were these guys thinking that would cause them to pass this guy by and leave him for dead? What was going through their minds? And I would say this, that these are probably some of the thoughts that were going through their minds. Number one, they're thinking, man, what is going to happen to me if I stop to help this man? Right? They're thinking like, man, could something similar happen to me? They're thinking maybe this, man, I bet this guy could be faking, right? And the wild goats are waiting for me, right? They're thinking, man, I don't know, the guy's probably faking. They're thinking, man, do I have time for this? Right? I'm a priest. I've got a church service to be at. I've got responsibilities that I have to do. Am I going to miss out on what I'm supposed to be doing? They're thinking, man, am I qualified? Will I have enough money to tend for the guy's wounds? And they're thinking, man, is this even going to make a difference in the long run in this man's life? So we can see that, man, so maybe some kind of valid thoughts go through their mind. And so we got to ask ourselves, what makes the Samaritan different than the priest and Levite in this situation? And I would say this is that when the priest and the Levite were counting the cost of what it would cost them to help this man, the Samaritan responded with love and compassion. So while the priest and the Levite were thinking, man, what's going to happen to me if I stop and help this man? This is what the Samaritan was thinking. He was thinking, what is going to happen to him if I don't? See, the Samaritan, maybe he saw the cost. Maybe he realized, yeah, these situations could all be real, but what is going to happen to this man if I pass him by? So guys, I've found in my own life that although a lot of times we want to be the Samaritan, right? We see ourselves as the good person in the story. We often end up being the priest or the Levite. Right? We look the part on the outside, but really, we don't always allow love and compassion to move our hearts the way the Samaritan did. We can kind of keep our distance. We can start asking ourselves, man, what about my reputation? We can start asking ourselves, man, well, I'm part of this certain friend group. If I start associating this person, which is, maybe they're more of like an outcast. If I start associating with that person, am I going to be seen differently? We can start thinking, man, well, is it going to cost me my comfort? Right? What if it's really awkward to share the gospel with somebody? What if it's really, what if it's kind of cringe to kind of, go out of my comfort zone and encourage my buddy when they're going through a hard time? We can start thinking, man, am I going to have to give up my future plans for my life? What if I feel God is calling me to maybe enter ministry, be a missionary one day? Am I going to have to give up my own future plans for going to college and getting this certain job? Am I going to have to give up the comfort that I've gotten so used to in my life? So what happens is we start to assess the cost and we put limits and boundaries on our love. But Jesus set a different example, right? Jesus said, I don't care the cost. I will go to the ends of the world. I will even go so much to leave heaven, to come to the earth and die the death of a sinner. I will go to whatever end for the sake of my love for humanity. Nothing got in the way of Jesus' love for you and for the world. And there's kind of three things that I've found in my own life that I call love blockers. Everybody say love blockers. Okay, these are three things that can get in the way of our love and get in the way of us showing the love of Jesus to the people around us. Number one is fear. Everybody say fear. And what I found, it's the fear of man. It's the fear of what people think of us. It's the fear of, am I going to be outcast from that friend group? It's the fear of maybe what are my parents going to think or what are other people going to think? And it causes us to go into a shell and not to live out loud for love, for the love of Jesus. Number two is comfort. Everybody say comfort. Right? It's asking, man, am I going to have to give things up in my life in order to live a lifestyle of the love of Jesus? Am I going to have to sacrifice? Am I going to have to suffer and give up my comfort? Number three is passivity. Everybody say passivity. It's kind of the thought that says like, man, kind of sounds like a lot of work, right? I don't know if it really takes all of that in order to live a lifestyle of the love of Jesus. Like, it sounds like a bit much. Can't I just kind of read my Bible every day and just kind of stay in my church and do my own thing? But the reality is that if your generation is going to see the change in the world that I believe it's going to see, then you're going to have to overcome fear with courage. You're going to have to say, you know what? I don't care what people think. I know what God has called me to, and I'm willing to do it. You're going to have to overcome comfort with sacrifice. You're going to have to address the fact that there is a cost to following Jesus. And you're going to have to say, you know what? I'm willing to pay that cost. And lastly, you're going to have to overcome passivity with action. You're going to have to realize, man, you know what? It does take all of that. And if not me, then who? So my belief for you guys and my prayer for you guys is that you would take a hold of the love of Jesus. You would allow his love to transform your life as it transformed mine. And you would give it all for Jesus. You would say, God, I reject any of those love blockers, and I want to chase after courage. I want to chase after sacrifice and action for the sake of love. So that's my belief for you guys. That's what we're going to be talking about in the Jesus Club, how you guys can go radically after Jesus in your daily life and at your school. I'm going to pray and hand it back over. But Jesus, we love you. We thank you for what you've spoken through your word. We thank you for just the worship, God, and what you're doing at CVCS. I just thank you for each one of these students. Pray you'd bless them. In Jesus' name, everybody said.
This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK through 12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.